Hey friends! Alright, so in this lesson we're going to learn about primers. There are, in most cases, you're not going to need a primer, as I mentioned in one of the earlier lessons, but there are times you do need a primer. So you're going to learn when and why you would need a primer, what kinds of primers to use for particular situations, and how to use them. Okay? So you may have noticed our piece has taken on a little bit of a different look. When I went back and edited my videos, I wasn't happy with the painting video where I painted my magazine rack, so I decided, since I happen to have another one, I was just going to redo it. So I'm going to do the primer and the painting videos on this piece and then pick up where we left off on the other one. So how lucky that I happen to have another beautiful antique magazine stand table. All right, you guys, so let's talk about, so obviously I've already cleaned it. And the next step is deciding on whether or not your piece needs a primer. So let's talk about the two different kinds of primers, okay? It's important to remember that primers fall into two different categories. One is a bonding primer. And think of the word bonding. That means like to adhere, to stick, right? So the purpose of a bonding primer is to create a surface to which your paint will stick. Now, chalk style paint sticks to most surfaces, but not all. So the times that you would need a bonding primer are when you have a very, very slick surface, like a laminate or like a countertop, glass, sometimes metal. Now, sometimes chalk paint will stick great to glass and metal just fine by itself, but sometimes it doesn't. So giving it a bonding primer helps it along. If you have a very, very shiny furniture surface, very, 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 very shiny, okay, then that helps to give it a bonding primer. So this is pretty bad. This is my bottle of what I have left of my Slick Stick. So this is a Dixie Belle product called Slick Stick. And as you can see, I hardly have any left. I have used it. I don't use it a lot on furniture itself because most furniture isn't quite all that slick and shiny, but I've used it on a couple pieces that I just felt like, wow, that's really shiny, right? I've used it on like countertops. That's more likely. It is a bonding primer, okay? It helps the paint bond. Taking that down a notch, this is not a bonding primer, sander, deglosser, but what it does do is help prepare your surface to be a little bit less slick. So I use this sometimes if my furniture is a little bit shiny and I'm a little bit worried that maybe the paint won't stick, but I don't really think it's this level. So then sometimes I'll just wipe it down with this, and then you just wipe it on a rag or wipe it in circles, and it helps your paint bond. Okay? Bonding primer. Dixie Belle Slick Stick is what I use. Then we have stain blocking primer, okay? And this is for when you need to block stains and you need to stop wood from bleeding through. So let's talk about that. This is a very old piece. You may notice that on the top, a lot of the finish has worn off, and it probably has some stains. It may have some oil stains. It's just kind of a rough finish that, you know, over time the top coats have worn off. So in addition to that, it's just kind of old and top coat's worn off throughout the piece. If I was going to be painting this piece a very light color, such as buttercream, which is slightly off-white, I would be worried about the wood bleeding through what they call tannins. So tannins are, well, I kind of call it wood juice. No matter how old and dead the wood is, it can still bleed through once a liquid of any kind is applied. So a lot of times what happens is, if you go straight to this with white or a light paint, the tannins can bleed through, not necessarily even immediately. Sometimes it doesn't show up for days or weeks, and it shows up as grungy orangey streaks, and you don't want that in your light paint job, okay? If you're doing a dark paint job on a piece like this, it's not a big deal. Those streaks and things aren't going to show through. It's for light colors, yellows, light grays, whites. So that can happen on any dark pieces of furniture, you guys. If you've got cherry, mahogany, if you've got old pieces where the top or any parts of the finish are worn, even oak, you guys, which this might be, no, this is an oak. I don't know what it is, but it's beautiful. Even oak pieces, the wood can bleed through. Pine knots, that can bleed through. So get those little pine knots. So what you want to do is stop them before they have a chance to bleed through. And I like this product most of all. It's by Dixie Belle. It's called Boss. Blocks odors, stains, and stops bleed through. So this one blocks odors too, which is amazing. Sometimes these pieces smell like smoke. That's the most common culprit. And if you clean it really well and paint it with this, you're not going to smell that smoke anymore. So there are a couple other things you can do. Clear shellac, either spray or brush on. Does the job for stains, but it does nothing to help with odors. So if you just want to block for stains, you can use this, but be aware it's very harsh smelling. You can inhale some bad stuff, so use proper ventilation and use it outside. I don't like working with shellac because it dries really fast. It's very thick and goopy, and I just don't like it. But that's just me. You could also use a shellac-based primer. So again, the keywords are shellac-based primer, and you want to be careful. Sometimes these are white. This one probably is, and I don't always want white on my piece. So just be aware that sometimes these things can be white. So if you use a primer from the hardware store for the purpose of blocking stains and trapping in wood juice or tannins, make sure it's a shellac-based primer, okay? So I'm going to use this one. Now, why am I using this on this piece? I'm going to be painting this piece a dark navy blue. I'm not all that worried about any problems anywhere except maybe the top. And why? Because the top, it may have some oil stains. Oil stains, ink stains, any kind of stains, they have a tendency to bleed through even dark colors. So just to be safe, I'm going to put some on the top. Now, because it's such a small piece, I might also just kind of hit the fronts and the sides a little bit, because you want to know what? It can't hurt. It can only help prevent problems. Okay, so I'm putting on my gloves for this one. I've already shaken, is that the right word, shaken? The can very well. Again, it's called Boss. I'm going to use my regular Dixie Belle small mini paintbrush and just dip it right in. I'm going to apply thin coats, probably 2. It dries very quickly, but not so quickly that you can't work with it. Like with the shellac, it dries like almost the second you put it on. So you want to do nice thin coats. I might as well just brush a little bit of this right here. Why not? Just a little bit. Because it does go on white, but it dries clear. So that's not going to affect, you know, my overall look any. They do make it in white if you want a white base. But because I'm going to be distressing this piece, I don't want any white showing through. I've chosen clear. So just a nice thin coat. It dries pretty fast. I'm going to come around to over here, finish this up here. Ooh, getting sloppy. So if you have a piece of furniture that's very, very dark, wood, cherry, mahogany, or a lot of the finish is worn off, like on this old piece here, and then any old piece, or even a newer piece where a lot of the finish is worn off, this is like an insurance policy to protect it from that nasty bleed through. And I'll tell you, when you've painted a piece white, and you go back the next day to, you know, finish it up, and you see all those little orange dingy streaks showing through, you're like, no. So a lot of times that's something that happens with us when we're first starting out because we don't know about that, okay? So that's why I'm teaching you about this now. And when in doubt, even just one coat of this Boss can make a big difference. I think sometimes I only just use one coat, and sometimes I'll use two. And like I said, I don't really feel like I need it for the whole piece because I'm painting this piece a dark navy color. But just since we've got a little time left on this video, I'll do this bottom shelf here. Because I guess if anywhere where it mattered, it would be there. Wouldn't want that to bleed through. But I don't think it will because I'm using a dark color. So it's really great for ink stains. I've done a lot of desk drawers. Inside the desk drawer is really ugly with, you know, pens that have leaked. And I've tried paint over them and paint over them and paint over them. And that ink stain just keeps coming through, no matter how many coats. And that's the same with oil stains. So I always like to hit them with a couple good coats of this if there's ink stains. So I'll just go a couple more minutes, just hit these sides. You might be able to see it's already starting to dry clear. It just can't hurt, you know, if you're not sure, give it a coat of this. Now that said, I probably use this on about maybe 15–20% of my pieces. So that should give you sort of a little idea of, you know, if you find you're using it on 80 or 90% of your pieces, you're probably using it when you don't need to. Okay, so then you just let it dry, and then at that point you decide if you want to do a second coat or not. I will just go ahead and finish this, do this whole piece, just so it's consistent. But I think you get the point, right? So, a little thin there. So at that point then you can decide if you want the second coat or not. Just right after it dries you can put on a second coat, which I will on the top only. Okay. So that is your primer. Pun intended, not a very good one either. So, bonding primers help your paint stick. Stain blocking primers prevent bleed through from your wood and your stains. And some of them, if they're good like this one, Boss, also blocks odors. So I have had pieces where they reeked badly of cigarette smoke. I cleaned them very well with White Lightning, painted them with 2 coats of Boss, up and down, inside out, every little square inch. It completely blocked out the odors. It was amazing. And then I could paint. You could never even tell that they smelled like smoke at any point in time. All right, you guys. So as soon as this dries, yay, we get to paint. Woo! It's gonna be fun. So we'll see you real soon in the next lesson. Bye.